get to it? ZOOMCAST.
Log in and check it out. Look at that Grima.
Boy, oh boy, we are on live. Welcome everybody to episode 9 of this humble little Zoomcast we've been doing right throughout lockdown. I'm Matt Grima, and today, geez, we've got a special guest in the building. We've gone all the way up north to the sunny state of Queensland. It is Australia's most followed real estate agent across social media, one of the very best in the industry. I speak, of course, of none other than definitely Drew Davies. Welcome, Drew.
Mate, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for getting on. We had a quick chat before we jumped on, and I believe you just closed another deal.
Well, it was settlement day. I didn't close the deal, but it was settlement day, and it was for a friend that I've known for a long time, and it was actually the smallest deal I've ever done.
Right.
But you saw how excited I was.
You were pretty happy, and I got to hear the call live, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the smallest deal ever, considering average sale price, I think, is sitting around that. It's come down a bit around that 2.2, and that was 232,500.
There you go. What was it? A studio apartment or something?
That was a beautiful apartment.
Yep.
It was stunning, and it was $30,000 more than the one that sold next door, which was a better apartment.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to get into how you did that and several other deals throughout your career. Drew, I've put together this little Zoomcast throughout lockdown. As I said, I love a character. I love a story. I used to be a journalist. I wasn't a very good one, so I decided to do real estate instead. And episode 4, Marcus Ciminello, one of the greats, I think we'd all agree, was kind enough to jump on. And then after his interview, he said, "Matty, if you like a story and you like your character, you've got to call my man Drew Davies up north." So, welcome aboard.
I think he's dropped you in it, Matt. I think he'd probably been having a drink or two, and he's dropped you in it there.
He might have been. He's been hitting the fireball variety lately, and you know what? Good on him. He's probably enjoying a little bit of the mental break before things get crazy again.
Exactly.
I thought, Drew, I've listened to a few podcasts of you on there. You've got one of the most incredible backstories of all time. You're originating from New Zealand. I think you played a little bit of poker to keep yourself afloat, which we'll touch on. You've worked with the Wolf of Wall Street himself, Jordan Belfort. You did a little bit with him. Take me back to the beginning, Drew. What was it like as a young man growing up in New Zealand and then making your way across?
It was horrible, mate. That's why I got out of there. No, that's all right. Look, I don't really like to admit I'm a Kiwi unless the All Blacks are playing.
Right.
I went from New Zealand to, if you're looking at my journey to how I got to real estate,
yep.
New Zealand, Las Vegas, Brisbane. And so I landed in Brisbane in 2008, got into real estate mid to end of 2014, I think it was.
Wow. And that journey from 08 to 14, including a little bit of Las Vegas in the middle. Talk me through the journey. There's a lot of people that know your story. There's a lot of people that wouldn't. How does one get into real estate, and what was the progression originally?
So I was in architecture originally.
Yep.
Doing that in New Zealand. I always played poker on the side, just to supplement my income. Nothing special, nothing outrageous, no high stakes, just, enough to make a, extra few grand here and there, a few $100 probably back then.
Yeah.
Always wanted to go to Las Vegas, always been fascinated with it my whole life, growing up rather modestly. I wanted the glitz and the glamour, always wanted to head there. So when I had enough money, I went to Las Vegas. I went for a week. I was so obsessed with it, and it was everything I imagined it to be, as I'm sure lots of people say the same thing.
Yeah.
I literally got on a plane back home. I landed and thought, stuff this, I'm going back.
You're going back?
I'm just going to go back, and I'm just going to play poker.
Wow.
So I went back, and I rode out about 8 months or just over, I think, just playing poker.
And you went back by yourself, Drew?
Yeah.
And how old are you at the time?
27, 28. I think I landed and had my 28th birthday.
Yep.
Maybe it was my 27th. Yeah, somewhere in there.
And in 2008, I'm a little bit of a poker geek. A quick story. Went to university, and throughout university, I used to run a couple of poker tournaments a couple of nights a week, where I jump on the mic and MC some of the events. And I love the game. In fact, Rocky, who needs to be propped up here because we don't have great technical nous, is sitting on Super System 2. So there you go, one of the Bible of poker for those who don't know.
Yeah.
So I love the game as well, and I was intrigued to hear that it was part of the way that you earned a little bit of money throughout a bit of a transition.
Yeah, look, like I said, I never shot the lights out. I was a grinder, you know. Yep. I would set my alarm for 2 a.m. I would head down to the casinos that had, you know, the rich kids in town that didn't really know how to play poker, but were throwing around a few $100, $1,000.
Yep.
So that was at the time, that was the win.
Yep.
So I'd set my alarm for 2 a.m. I'd head down to the win. I'd have a couple of drinks. I'd hit the tables around 3, and I'd just sit there and grind it out, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. And back then poker was pretty hot. It was probably hotter than it was now.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
sure. So it was still competitive, but at that time in the morning, at a certain casino, on certain tables, you were shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was enough to get by, party, pay rent. You know, probably a lot more than I was making in architecture. It was just a lifestyle that was it was tough. Yeah,
yeah. And did it eventually wear on you to a point where the mindset might have shifted in terms of wanting to pursue something else?
Yeah, I guess so. Look, I can't really put myself back in that mindset. It feels like so long ago, but at the time I had a friend who was like, "Oh, you're thinking about leaving Vegas? Come live on my couch in Brisbane." And I was like, "That sounds excellent." So I flew to Brisbane, parked up on his couch. Next day, he's like, "Right, come into the city. We'll get you a job." And I'm like, "Excellent." The train ride's taken way too long. Like, I'm on this train for, it felt like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Is Brisbane this big?" And he's like, "Well, I don't technically live in Brisbane. It's Ipswich." I was like, now, I'm not sure who knows Ipswich and who doesn't. And it's a great place. I'm sure it is if you spent time there. But It's a very different place to Brisbane. So I didn't last long there. And then I got a job back in architecture in Brisbane and did that. And I was reading a lot of books at the time. That's when I read The Wolf of Wall Street. I've always been an avid reader. I love reading. And that's when I started getting into sales books and thought, well, if I'm ever going to be able to put money in the bank and do something with my life, it's sales.
Yep.
So I ended up in recruitment for a little bit doing that. And then that's when the opportunity with Jordan presented itself. So I jumped at that thinking, yeah, I'm working for Jordan. This is great. Really.
Hit pause, Drew. How do you go from reading The Wolf of Wall Street to working with The Wolf of Wall Street? Talk me through that story.
So whenever it was, 2000, when I arrived in Brisbane, read the book, I shot an email to the publisher or who I thought was the publisher or whoever it was.
Right.
And then it was years after that, I got a phone call out of the blue from a girl who was actually his assistant, Kirsten, and she just said, "Look, I'm just reaching out to you. We're looking to hire some people to help Jordan on his tour." And I thought, this is great. I'm going to work for Jordan. So they arranged this meeting, and it was literally 200 of the worst salespeople you've ever met crammed into in a room on the Gold Coast. And Jordan stood up and gave his big speech and got everyone pumped. And long story short, he fired all of them, bar me and one other after however long it was, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I don't know. And we ended up selling a lot more tickets just on the phone than all of them expected. So again, it was just like, this is mind blowing. I'm putting you on a plane. You're coming over to stay with me at Manhattan Beach.
Right. So your role at the time that Jordan came to the Gold Coast was to sell tickets to his event to anybody that would listen. That was. I
had no database, no anything. It was you have a phone.
Yep.
Sell some tickets and you make commission.
And what sales experience did you have at the time you were doing that?
Cold calling like that? None.
None. None. So you clearly would have been, when I say up against, you might have been competing against other sales agents that would have had some experience or nous in the sales arena, and you've been able to take care of them pretty quickly. Do you think that that's a skill thing, or do you think it was hey, I'm not going to miss this opportunity?
I think it was I'm going fucking broke. That's all it was.
Yep.
I was going broke and I
Yep.
just needed to make money. And sometimes you need your back put up against the wall like that. I would love to say I have some, some ability that no one else has, but that I just certainly don't.
Yeah.
So it was just a pure need to make it work. That was it.
So
when you have that need to make it work, and this is what I don't understand about a lot of people, when you have that true need, when you've got no other option, you will sit there and you will make calls until you make money. It's as simple as that. And if you don't know the right things to say, you figure it out pretty quickly.
Yeah. So, however you do it, you sell the most amount of tickets along with another guy.
Yep.
And talk me through what happened from there in terms of your connection with Jordan.
So he copies us, me and this other gentleman, Nick, in on the email together.
Yep.
And he was literally in this email. I think the exact words were along the lines of, "I've hired a game warden with trank darts. Buckle up. It's about to get wild. Please find attached your tickets." And I was like, this is great. So I literally turned up to the airport. So did Nick. And I'm like, hey, I kind of remember you from, the conference or the big room where they brought all these salespeople together.
Yep.
And, we started drinking, we got on the plane, we started sharing stories, and I asked what he's into, he asked what I'm into, and I distinctly remember I asked what he earned, and he told me, and I was like, in my mind, I'm like, that's pretty much what I earn. And he's like, I don't want to be sorry, I think you got the wrong idea. That's what I earn a month.
And what was Nick doing at the time?
He was living in China, selling house and land packages around Rochedale, back here in Queensland, to the Chinese.
Right. So you and Nick, so a guy you don't know who was in the room with you at the time that you're making these ticket sales for Jordan Belfort. You're on a plane together. Where are you heading? You're heading to
Manhattan Beach, so LA.
Manhattan Beach in LA. Yep. You jump off the plane, and what happens from there?
I quit my job.
You quit your job.
I left a message and quit my job. So all that time that I was just to backtrack and make the story make sense, the whole time that I'm making phone calls for Jordan, I basically told my work I was sick. I was like, here's an opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of it.
Right.
So I rang up, quit my job. I asked Nick, what do I do? He said, you need your sales license, talk to these guys, and then find a job. And that was it. So when I got back to Australia, however long it took, 10 days later, I had my sales license, whatever it took. My full sales license, I thought I'm going to do it commission only. I didn't know at the time that probably wasn't the best way or even allowed to happen. So I just really backed myself into a corner.
Wow. Was the movie out at the time that you worked with him?
No. The movie, he knew it was absolutely happening for a fact. And it had been filmed. So while we were there, he teed up a little meeting with Leo while we were there. So it had all been recorded, but it hadn't been edited, hadn't been released. I don't even think the marketing had really started for it.
Right. Okay. So you're rubbing shoulders with DiCaprio. You get back to Australia. You've clearly got a new lease on life. You've got this tunnel vision, if you like, that I'm getting into real estate. I'm getting into sales. I'm burning the bridges, and I'm burning the boats, and I'm getting stuck into it. Monetarily, financially, things would have been challenging if you've quit your job and you're bouncing around overseas. You had to tap mum on the shoulder and get some assistance.
Yeah, so I had to borrow 10 grand off mum. Mum's not a wealthy lady, so looking back, that's quite a and I'm sure there's tons of people who have been in the same situation. I'm an only child. It's even looking back on it, it's not embarrassing at all because I did what I had to do, but it's not a great feeling, but you mentally tick up these little things that you do, and that is what builds your desire to have to succeed. Yeah. I can't not succeed knowing that I borrowed 10 grand off my mum when my mum probably didn't have that 10 grand to spare. Well, she didn't have that 10 grand to spare. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was the plan with the loan from mum? What were you going to do with the money?
Pay the rent.
Pay the rent. Got it.
I was at the time getting very creative with the bank, and I was paying rent on my credit card. That's when, all these people have these chats about, I was up against it, and I was paying rent on my credit card. Yeah. I had no income. commission only, and I think my credit card was up to about 27 grand just from getting a little creative with the banks.
Yeah, extraordinary. So backs against the wall. You've got the tunnel vision about real estate. Talk me through the early days of Drew Davies' career as an estate agent. What were you like? You clearly had many of the traits that make a successful estate agent, and drive and hunger are right up there. How did you then couple that energy with the technical nous that you need to be able to get to a level that you're at now?
I don't know. All I had was the energy. That was it. When you say I had the skills, I absolutely didn't. I did everything wrong. I thought I knew a better way. I thought, I thought I knew better. I was always looking for ways to do things better, and it was just wrong. Like, I was just going about it all wrong. I had the privilege of speaking at a very good, very, very close friend of mine's company yesterday morning, and the very first slide that I put up was my very first group certificate after a year in real estate. It was $35,766.
Yep.
That was before my tax obligation, which was about $3,200. So you're looking at about $600 a week that I earned in that first year.
Yeah.
Below minimum wage.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And you said commission only, so you didn't have the safety net of a retainer like a lot of agents do. Some do, some don't. But you were all in from day one.
Day one, burnt the bridges. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I think if I had that this is just for me. I know other people it's different. Certainly, different strokes, different folks. But for me, I needed to be put in that corner.
Drew, what do you say to, I have no doubt we're going to touch on your social media shortly, because it's extraordinary the amount of followers that you have, and the things that you do on there are pretty cool. If I get 4 messages on Instagram, 3 of them are from mum going, Matt, are you there? Matt, come back to me. And one of them might be a thumbs up or a fire emoji or something like that. So I can only imagine the DM column in your inbox getting absolutely full by the second. And I reckon a lot of them, if I'm not mistaken, would be younger agents that would be knocking on the door going, Drew, I need some advice, or, can you help me, or can we meet for a coffee, or how did you do it, or what do you do? How do you handle newer people in the industry that have an appetite to learn, and what advice do you give those people?
That's a really good question. And it's I'm not going to say it really pisses me off, but it is a frustration. So 2 things. I will always respond every time, and I'll do my best job of responding that time allows. It won't be straight away. Sometimes it'll be 10 o'clock that night, maybe even on the weekend. But I'll always do my best to respond. But I guess what frustrates me is all these people are so quick to tap, send out a message, can I pick your brains over a coffee? Or they'll ask me a question and basically say, you're the guy to answer this for me, and ask me a question that I've already answered a million times on a podcast. And I'm like, if I was really that guy, you would have done a little bit more research than just tapping out a message on Instagram. Like I said, I'll always respond, I'll always be polite, and I'll always do my best job of responding.
Yep.
But that's never a guy I'm going to offer a job.
Yep.
That's never the guy I'm going to think he's a go-getter. Looking back on how I approached other people and mentors that I look up to, it's just chalk and cheese.
Yeah. Yeah. There's do you get inundated with requests for people that want a job or want some insight?
Yeah, I wouldn't say inundated, but I'd say one a day at least one a day from someone at school or someone looking to move jobs, or and some of them are really great. Keep in mind, but most great hires that I've made, firstly in my own team and now in the business, have been through Instagram. Yeah,
extraordinary. 30 or close to 33,000 followers at last glance on Instagram. Why do you think, this might be a question that sounds funny when I ask it, but why do you think people follow Drew Davies?
Look, I think about it all the time because I'm constantly trying to evolve my Instagram and not grow it, but get deeper relationships with the following that I already have. I think that's an important metric for people to understand.
Yep.
A couple of things. I think the people that used to follow me, it's probably a different demographic of people who follow me now.
Yep.
And I think the impression that the masses have of me just from following my Instagram is probably very different from the people who know me that follow my Instagram. Because it would be very easy to flick through my page and write me off as a certain person. But then again, the people who follow me and look at my stories every day probably understand I'm not that guy at all.
Yeah, I was about to say that there's a lot of estate agents out there that have got the glitz and glamour about the sold sticker, the car, the watch, the shoes, all that sort of stuff. And God bless them. If that makes them happy, go for it. The thing I like about your Instagram is, sure, you're showcasing some of the properties you're selling or some of the success you're having, but it's coupled nicely, and there's this beautiful balance of, I'm a dad. I've got 2 kids. I've got a wife. I'm a human being first, and an estate agent second. You clearly feel that that's important to get that balance right on social media.
Yeah, look, I try not to think about what people will think of me when I post. Like, a few years back, I bought a brand new Range Rover, and for me, that was a huge deal. No one in my family has ever bought a brand new car, let alone a Range Rover. So I'm pumped. Of course, I'm posting photos, but I'm also smart enough to know I don't own that Range Rover.
Right.
The bank does.
Yep.
So it's only smoke and mirrors if you're not honest about it. I don't own that car. The bank does, because that's the smartest way for me to do it.
Yep. Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you've just got to you've got to wrap it up with a little bit of humility and understand that a lot of us are all on the same page. And for these people who are trying to position themselves above everyone else, I think all they're doing is making themselves stick out like a sore thumb, and not in a good way. So I try not to do that. But I also, like, if I'm pumped with something, I'm going to show it and say I'm pumped.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people, Drew, I think initially that try to avoid social media as an end strategy to what they do from a prospecting or a brand recognition perspective. And I think slowly you're starting to see some. There's plenty of extroverted introverts in real estate. A lot of people would be surprised. So the chess beater out in public might actually be the shyest person going around, or an auctioneer that's really good at what he does 5 or 6 times on a Saturday doesn't necessarily like the limelight post what he's done from a work perspective. What advice do you have for people who may be gun shy on what people think about them on social media, how they're likely to be perceived, some of the content they may or may not put out there? Talk me through that.
If you're gun shy about how you're going to be perceived or what people are going to think, just don't do it.
Yep.
Just don't do it. But you got to remember, you're going to lose business because of it. Multiple 6 figures of my business comes through Instagram, not social media, just Instagram. And then there's additional benefits from LinkedIn, Facebook, but Instagram. I mean, there was, what are we now? September. Last month, 2 properties I sold were sold through Instagram.
So when you say your business comes from Instagram, are you talking about seller leads, buyer leads, or a combination of both?
Combination of both. So let's run through the examples of the 2 that I sold in August.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on my couch on a Friday night, and I get a message from someone, "Hey Drew, I've been following you for a couple of years. Just letting you know, my girlfriend and I are in a position to purchase now, probably up to around the 1.3 range." I'm like, okay, well, I don't have anything in that range myself, but because I'm on the couch, it's not like I'm just watching TV.
Yeah.
So I flicked them through a couple of links to agents in my office and their listings. What about this? What about this? What about this? He's like, "This one's interesting. Can we take a look at that tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." The open home's at 10 o'clock. They said, "Can we come through with you privately later in the day?" Took them through on the Saturday. They bought it on the Sunday.
Yeah, extraordinary.
That's such a great success story.
Yeah, definitely.
The other one, a friend saw a property on my page. She'd been following me because of my children. She's got kids. She loves kids. She sent that to her friend in Sydney. The Sydney buyer rang me. We'd been speaking for 3 months. She ended up buying it, but I didn't realize until well after the fact that it all came through Instagram.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah. So some of the tangible.
You're leaving a lot on the table. If you're not pushing social media, that's fine, but you're leaving a lot on the table. If people are worried about what people think, I think agencies themselves have a lot to answer for. I think they did a terrible job of managing how their agent should be perceived. And I think the thing they did wrong was saying, "Nobody do anything. Don't don't post this, don't post that. Oh, but we all want you to be individual, but don't be individual.
Yeah.
We all want you to have personalities, but don't show your personality.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've worked for a company where they were very much like that. And then what you've seen over the last 3 years, it hasn't even been a progression. It's been no, snap, why aren't you on social media?
Right.
Why don't you have a huge following? And it's like, well, you've kind of done it to yourselves, guys.
Yeah. 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 A couple of rapid fire questions about social media. So do you have a social media account manager, or is it all you?
Every single thing is touched by me and me only.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And have you ever thought about outsourcing it, or do you feel that that tangible authenticity is important?
It's the most important.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, don't get me wrong. I do understand when some people say, well, you know, I don't have the, no, I don't understand when people say they don't have the time. That just means you're not prioritizing it. You know, it's something that I prioritize because I make money out of it. You know, and I get a lot of cool stuff from it as well. I get cool experiences, stuff that ties in with my life anyway. So
yep.
It's a big part of what I do.
And you've got third parties that have reached out to you in the past that might have given you a business opportunity to promote some of their products or equipment or whatever the case may be?
Every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I decline probably most of them. But if it's something I would use anyway, you know, and when I say use anyway, always hotel stays, anything to do with cars, clothes, if they're clothes I'd wear and they're suits that I'd wear, restaurants. I try and keep it in that genre because the minute you step outside of that, people start going, what's going on here? You know, like in the past, I've taken some, you know, collaborations, paid things, and you post it and people are like, WTF is this? You know, and I get that.
Yeah. There's got to be there's probably going to be a fine balance, but you seem to have that right. Talk me through your world at the moment. So obviously we're in Victoria. We're stuck in a stage 4 lockdown. We physically can't take a buyer through a property at the moment, privately or otherwise, which is not easy for us, for sellers, for buyers. We feel a little bit stuck at the moment. Sure, we can do some virtual stuff, and we seem as though there's some light coming at the end of the tunnel. But talk me through what's going on in your world day to day. Maybe touch on things like your average sale price, your competition, what happens in the areas that you work.
Yeah, you know, we've fluctuated in and out of restrictions, but nowhere near what the unfortunate people throughout Melbourne are going through. At the moment, private inspections are fine, open inspections are fine with restricted numbers. There's not a lot that we can't do. So on top of that, we're probably seeing the benefit from, you know, what you guys are unfortunately going through in Melbourne and Sydney, because we're seeing a lot of those buyers come up here and a lot of them are even buying sight unseen.
Wow.
So social media has even taken on another gear in the past 6 weeks because of that.
Yeah.
More people at home, more eyes on screens. If you're in property mode, you're looking on other people's Instagrams, Facebooks, you're following agents. So that's really ramping up. But, you know, we've seen really huge, big growth in the past 3 months.
Yeah. And what's the demographic that you're typically selling for or selling to, and what sort of prices are we talking about?
So the suburbs I typically sell in, Hamilton, Ascot, Clayfield, they're long established suburbs. You know, I'm selling to established families, probably their third home, a lot of them that, you know, that final home purchase. Average sale price would be in the 2 millions. But, you know, the bulk of it sits between that high 1s and 4 is probably the high not the high turnover, but, you know, where the turnover happens. And a lot of those people that I sell out of those homes typically turn around and say, do you have any lock and lead penthouses? And because I cut my teeth in the city, in the CBD, I've got this dual sort of thing going on where I sell a lot of these people straight into penthouses in the city. So I've got a very high rate of sort of 2 million plus penthouses in Brisbane CBD as well.
So the connection from where you started in real estate and the property that you were selling then and now. There seems to be a bit of a link between that. Can you talk us through that?
So it all started with a door knock. You want the whole story about how I went from apartments to houses?
Yeah, this is raw, uncut. Go for it. Whole story.
Okay. So I didn't have a car at the time, and I lived in the city. So I was my options are I sell what I can walk to.
Right.
So that's what I did. I sold what I could walk to. And there was a building. I managed to get a listing. It was a 2-bedroom. It needed a lot of work. It was well overpriced. We've all been there, done this.
Yeah.
And every time I'd have that open home, I would door knock the 3-bedroom next to it because I knew it had direct riverfront views and was renovated, because every time the owner would crack the door, I'd peek in, and it had beautiful chandeliers. And anyway, I used to drop a note under a door after every open home, just letting you know how many people had come through, what else had sold in Brisbane City that week, handwritten. This went on, we're talking weeks, because I had this listing for weeks, months. And then one day, as I was leaving, she just popped her head out and said, look, we're actually looking at selling. Do you want to come and take a look? Long story short, I sold that through Instagram, 2014 or 15, to a lady in Dubai for 1.24 million. That was my highest price at the time. The sellers were so excited, they said, you have to speak with our daughter. You have to speak with our daughter. She's got a house on the market in Hamilton, and Hamilton is just, I've always just thought of Hamilton as the area. It's the premier suburb.
Yeah.
And so she put me in touch with her daughter, and the daughter at first thought, oh, look, I'll give it, you could just tell. She was like, oh, this guy, we'll give him a bit of time. And it was about that time that, and this ties in with how I met Marcus, I'd gone to I think it was a Glenn Twiddle event, and it was the first time Marcus had ever spoken on a stage in front of a lot of people, I think.
Yep.
And I went up and introduced myself afterwards, and I was a bit of a fanboy probably at the time.
Yep. So he's got plenty.
I'm probably still a fanboy, to be honest. And I just introduced myself. I left. I went back to my desk, and he already had an email sitting in my inbox. I didn't tell him my last name, and I didn't tell him the company I worked for.
Really?
I just said Drew from a boutique real estate in the city. So he'd obviously sent a text to his EA at the time and said, Drew, boutique in the city, send him a thank you.
Yeah.
And that it really blew my mind and changed my whole perception of what going that next level is. He had nothing to gain from me. So that was when I really started thinking differently.
Yeah.
Stupidly, he said in this email, if you ever need anything, give me a call.
Yep.
So when I got in the door of this 3 million plus house in Hamilton, back and forth, I ended up listing it. Took it off the agent. I ended up signing it. I got back in my car with the listing agreement.
Yep.
And I was just thinking, I had no idea how to sell this. So I searched Marcus's number online, left him a voice message. I can't remember if I left him a voice message or just hung up. But in between doing that, I booked a flight. I was like, fuck, if he's never going to say yes to me flying to Melbourne and having a coffee with him. He's going to think I'm a stalker. I'll just book it. So he rang back and he starts with, sorry, mate, can't do that. Really busy week. And I was like, mate, I'll cut you off. I'm really sorry. I've already booked it. I'm there on Friday. So he's like, all right, I'll have a coffee with you. So I had a coffee with him and I picked his brains. I wrote everything down.
Yep.
We were there longer than I think we should have been, because at the end, he's like, do you want to come back? My office is just across the road. I'll show you around my office. So I go back there. I walk into his office, and his poor staff are giving me looks. And he's like, I forgot it's my birthday. I'm supposed to take them out for lunch.
You booked in on his birthday.
Yeah. So I feel quite bad about that. But look, I've taken Marcus's advice ever since, with big decisions. And a lot of where I am now is due to the advice that he's given. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah. It's a great story, Drew. No doubt, in part, you'd be playing a mentorship role to agents that might have been in your or a similar position then. There's a lot of we're fortunate enough to have a few people that have been kind enough to tune in to these little Zoomcasts that I've been doing. What advice would you have for Victorian agents at the moment that might be doing it a little bit tough? not just from a financial sense, but mentally to get up and present yourself in a way to have a go at getting some clientele post lockdown. There might be some people that are okay with it. There might be others that are struggling behind the scenes. And Marshall White have got a brilliant way of keeping everybody connected through mentor groups and company meetings and guest speakers and all that sort of stuff. It's been outstanding. But for the agent that might be watching this, that's just battling, that's thinking about the next paycheck, that might be paying rent on their credit card, what advice do you have?
It's a really serious question because it's a really serious issue right now. So financially, I mean, I'm not in this situation myself, but anytime I find myself up against it, I always just work on myself. If you get yourself right first,
yeah,
your energy's better. And when you have good energy, your clients come to you, they feel it. And that's not some woo-woo. When I say work on yourself, if you're not happy with your health, don't spend half an hour in the gym. Spend an hour in the morning, an hour at night. Do double sessions. You've got time on your hands. Anytime I work on myself, I find I start attracting business, even if I'm sacrificing work hours by working on myself. So I think just try, start with fixing all the things you don't like about yourself. Everyone's got things that they're not completely happy with. Got time on your hands, fix that. You'll find you're a better person. You've got better energy. And then when you are making those calls, because I don't think this is a reason for everyone to pull back, you've just got to change your dialogue, reach out for different reasons. If people were thinking about selling prior to this, they're still thinking about it. Strategize about how you're going to bring them to market first in the best possible light when restrictions ease. There's so much to think about and put in place. I don't think anyone should be sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Unfortunately, you can't take a holiday, which would make it easy. Otherwise, the advice would be go take a holiday.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think there's always something to do. Some people say that I overthink a lot. I probably do, but I think it's a great time to strategize or re-strategize your entire business.
Yeah.
Or potentially, when we come out of this, the entire industry will work in a different way. Be prepared for that.
Yeah.
What works now will not work in the future. I think everyone will agree with that.
Yeah. Well said. That's some really good advice, and I think a few people get a bit out of that. Are you an audiobook guy? Are you a podcast guy? Is there something that you religiously listen to? I'm sure you're going to be a subscriber of ZOOMCAST, of course, Drew. But is there anything you tune into that?
Absolutely, I will be, mate. Yeah, look, I'm a big podcast guy, so I'm very set in my way. So my routine, we're talking down to the minute at the moment.
Wow.
But it's good because I've never been that person, so I really enjoy it. Big on podcasts at the moment.
Yep. Who are you listening to?
I fluctuate between a lot of them, but people may roll their eyes at this, but I really do like how Jordan Belfort conducts his podcasts. I do get a lot out of that.
Sure.
I think he's got a great intro, and I do side with his thought process on a lot of things anyway.
Sure.
The $1 Million Podcast, $1 Million Agent, all of the agents, the Justin Nickerson, he's doing some great podcasts at the moment.
Yep.
I always get a lot out of any agent. I think there's always something to take. It's very rare I'll listen to something and be, rubbish.
Yeah.
Extremely rare.
Yep.
I always love when there's a podcast with my competition. I think I'll dissect those, whether rightly or wrongly. I'm taking a lot from that. But yeah, big on podcasts. I've just changed recently from listening to podcasts the whole time I'm at the gym to I'm just back to a little bit of music at the moment, just to give me a bit of a rest. But I fluctuate back and forth.
Yeah. Well, you've been in the gym. I've seen it on Instagram. That shirt's getting a little tight around the bicep region. So,
look, I've got to be honest, mate. I put this in the dryer before I came on, just to kind of give that effect.
Well, you've fooled me, mate. You've done very well. Where can people find you if they want to hit up the Instagram or maybe pick your brain like you did the great Marcus Ciminello back in the day?
Mate, they're welcome to shoot me an email, drewdavies@eplace.com.au. Otherwise, Instagram, I'm always, it's always on my phone. Notifications are on at definitely Drew Davies. Facebook, I'm usually a little bit slower on. That can take me a day or two.
Yep. No, well played. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I genuinely appreciate you giving us a bit of time. This will be on iTunes, Spotify, and of course it'll be on Instagram shortly as well. Drew, well done. Best of luck with your continued success. Thanks again for giving us some intel and insight into your world. Much appreciated.
I appreciate the invite, mate. I'm flattered. Thank you.
Good on you. Good on you. Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, mate.